Marhaba wa ahlan wa sahlan. I really don't know if I can match the great scenes which we have seen and the great speakers which were before me, but I'll try to tell you my story, or the story of a building. Once I was at the transit hall at Chicago Airport, and I was waiting for my plane, and all of a sudden I met somebody from Gaza. He was a simple guy, and we started to talk about Gaza, the difficult conditions, and how the Israeli occupation and the blockade made their life to hell. And as it came out that I'm an architect, he told me, I don't understand much about architecture, but there is a nice building that my children really love a lot. It has a library and lots of activities, and they love to go to it. He said, it's a pity that you cannot go anymore to Gaza, but if you can get yourself a permit through maybe an international NGO, maybe you can go there and visit that building. It's interesting, it's nice, it's colorful, and it's not done by Arabs. I heard him. I was pleased inside that there is something. People react this way. And while we were talking, his plane was already announced. So he gathered his things and he wanted to leave. And as we shook hands, as Arabs always, marhaba, salamu alaikum, I kept his hand and I said, do you know, that building which your kids love is designed by Arabs and even Palestinian architects, and I'm the architect. As I looked at his smile and his skeptical look, I thought that he didn't believe me, but he wanted to be nice and accept what I said. Because in general, we noticed that the idea of Arab architecture, of Arab architects, that they should build with arches, it should be full of arches, round arches, flat arches, pointed arches, whatever, arches and domes. We build concrete standard blocks and we punch them with windows that look like architects, and we think that we are realizing Palestinian or Arab architecture. After postmodernity in the 80s and the 90s, as if the Arabs discovered their roots through putting arches on all the buildings, which is a problematic issue. Because if you think about it, Rome has more arches than Mecca. So it's not really so easy. But it's a simple symbol and it sells well. So if you do that, people will be happy. But if you try to work against that convention, which tries to use the arches as decorations, which is more a superficial attitude, it becomes difficult. And sometimes you cannot convince the clients, and you may have difficulties to sell. So when we look at ourselves sometimes, we notice that we believe in a very rich history and a very rich tradition. We want to build like our ancestors. But in the same times, we are confused with our reality. We are not happy. We want change. And we look for a miracle that can give us quick change. So at that time, facing this building, we had a deep discussion between us as architects. This is a building which doesn't have arches, tried to explore a different language, and tried to look for a new expression, a new aesthetical expression, if you want, and a national symbolic expression. Architecture is very important in our life. We as architects are taught that we shape our buildings and they shape us in return. When you look at architecture, sometimes buildings can make us happy and they can make us depressed. There are nice buildings with which we identify, and there are buildings which irritate us. We call architecture as the third skin. The biological skin, clothing is the second, and the buildings are the third skin. Practically, architecture is the container of social processes. So it's not we shouldn't take it too seriously, but we shouldn't also underestimate its importance. As I was asked to talk to you here, I didn't know what can an architect tell you from our specialty. So I decided I will tell you the story of a building that I believe changed us as designers, and I hope it's affecting some change in its role and in its social role. What are architects? Architects practically are a type of engineers who are lost between art and social sciences. They tend to dress sometimes peculiarly on in black, and many of them will have long hairs. I cannot afford it anymore. And we talk a lot, we discuss a lot, we argue, we make lots of sketches. I read lately that students of architecture work the hardest between all colleges and faculties. We are engaged also with society, with art, and with technology. That's why a building practically is a statement. It's a statement to society, it's a statement to culture, and it has something to say. And architects should see themselves as social thinkers, not as decorators. So practically, with the building which we have, Al-Qattan, it's called Al-Qattan Center for the Child. It was a competition. It was an educational building which was intended to have a large library and lots of activity areas for the children. It's an educational building. It's for children. And it's in Gaza. At that time, it was a national moment, Gaza first. And for us, dealing with identity was very important. Even the client wanted us to deal with tradition and look for a Palestinian contemporary identity. So we ask ourselves, should we repeat and imitate the standard convention, arches, 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 or look for something else? What should we tell our children? What should we say to them? Maybe we should use the wise saying related to Imam Ali, which says, "علموا أولادكم لزمان غير زمانكم." Teach your students something for a different time than yours. So practically, we started to do research and think, how does traditional architecture look like? How can we deal with that? How can we be inspired of it? Should we copy it, or should we innovate and reinterpret it again? So here you see examples of classical domes, and our domes were split and done in a different way because we wanted to catch north light, which is much homogeneous for the library, or the lighting which comes from above, and the arches, the domes which we have. Should we repeat them exactly as they are, or should we adapt them to our new needs and new conditions? So practically, after different sketches, different quarrels, different discussions, we came to the idea of a bazaar of knowledge and FUN-tazy. The bazaar is a place for exchange of goods and money, but now we can use it as a place for exchanging ideas, knowledge, and learning. Fun is very important for learning with fun, because if learning, you are obliged to learn, you won't achieve the same results as when you have fun in it. In the same time, we wanted a place that for the children can create questions and maybe offer answers, and provides different interpretations to our traditional forms. So we had courtyards, we had domes, we had a bazaar, but all of them look totally different. The space here you see is organized around a main axis, different areas for small children, younger children, and adults, computer centers, a cafe. All activities were organized in a traditional way, but they didn't look traditional at all. And part of the ideas which we thought of, which really take the tradition but present it in a different manner. This is a water element by the entrance. It's not far away from the sabil concept which we have in the villages and in the cities, where you provide water for the people. People can drink of it. Here you have a bench which you can stay. There is a waterfall, and there is a corner which you can drink water. And this is often open for everybody outside. But because of the Gaza water problems, now the waterfall doesn't work, and that drinking pit is the only thing which works. That's our reality. Here is our dome, which looks different than the classical dome, but it uses its principles. مقاصد الشيء مش شكله. The principles of the object and not its form. We were not interested just in copying the form. So you have the verticality, you have the enclosure, which characterizes the domes. Here is the axis of the Bazar. We were inspired by the arches and domes, but we really made them in a different interpretation. We used the system, but we made it playful. We played with the light. We wanted to emphasize that axis, like all the bazaars which we have, but in a different way that maybe puts some enigmas in the space. Children can think about it. The story which I'm telling you, we won't tell it to every user, but then the users will be asking these questions. We were not sure of what we are doing at a certain time. We were convinced of reinterpretation and not imitation, which was based on al-ijtihad, لا التقليد, أهل العقل وليس النقل. And there were questions which we discussed. Do we want to focus on rational reinterpretation or just emotional copying? Those were issues which bothered us by the discussion and occupied us. When you see the roof, these were forms of our light domes, I call them, which bring light inside the building. Even our arches were more playful, skewed, different, not very rigid and symmetric. It's like life. Our courtyards were not made square or rectangular, similar to the glorious gardens of the Alhambra Palace. No, this is a children's library I needed for a storytelling area. So it came somehow half circular, because it allows such a space and it allows such an activity. We were not stuck in the formalism, although usually we are met, like you, all of you, with شو يقولوا الناس. شو معقول ليش? It doesn't work in our country. It doesn't work like that. People expect something different. No. I think it's important to give us your expectations and not to repeat our expectations. Otherwise, societies will just repeat themselves. If you want to flourish, we want new ideas. Thank you. Even colors meant a lot for us. Okay, when you look simply, those colors resemble sea and sand. But they are also philosophically complementary opposites. If you mix them, you get green. So we played on it and we made the aluminium in green color. But it also meant for us a philosophy of duality, which we have it in different cultures. You have it in Islam by the creation in pairs. بما معنى وخلقنا من كل شيء زوجين. You can find it in the yin and yang. You can find it even in modern philosophy, European philosophy, in the complementary opposites, the contradictions and unity of complementary opposites. But anyway, that was for us also another enigma, another trick to tease our students so that they can ask, they can look, they can enjoy and raise questions. The building at the end developed as Sandu al-Ajab, a wonder box, introverted, relatively distanced from the outside, with very few windows, but inside we had a very active life. In the back, we developed a grammar, a certain color for certain walls, white connections for the walls, which should be planters. At least for a child, if he looks at it, he can imagine decomposing it as a Lego piece. Certain walls had a certain color, the other walls had a different color. So we wanted also this playful element. This is a building for children, but it should not deal with children as dummies, but maybe to challenge them to think and interact with it. For example, this corner should have been also another additional idea, which should enrich our life, environmental awareness, where we wanted to use recycled art and recycle the water and irrigate the plants, which I think a very important issue for our architecture in the future as a country with less water. This area was not finished as we want because of two things. First of all, I wanted to make the artwork with the children, but I couldn't enter Gaza anymore after the Intifada. And then I would say also many of our institutions, and I don't make any exceptions, لا أستثني منهم أحدا, are generally unaware of the environmental needs and don't put it in their first priorities. So that was an idea which we wanted to push, but also we should talk about certain setbacks. Furthermore, we were not, as I told you, very sure of what we are doing, but slowly we started to get feedbacks from the people. We noticed that it was called in Al-Umran, which is an architectural magazine in Gaza, as a masterpiece of Palestinian art. We felt it's too much, but it's nice. It gave us some confidence. In other, although then in 2016, this won the architectural award of architectural distinction, the Palestine Award. But what really inspired us more was at the end what we saw on Facebook from somebody which we didn't talk to, we didn't know. She had lots of pictures, she was there, she loved the space, she considered it as interesting design, she loved the spirit by the children, and at the end it called it an island of freedom. What I want to say, why should I bring you this building? Because at a certain time we were not sure what are we doing. Should we go into interpretation or just imitation? And we did it in spite of what shu yqulun nas and what is the general convention. At the end, I think what we wanted to say is just be yourself, stand for your convictions, live your values, and society wants you as you are. And usually, it's not neuroscience like the great things which we talked about before. It's just a simple thing that you can do in your everyday life. Just contribute your attitude and your position. Don't wait for the big revolution. Make your small one. Make at least your evolution. And remember that the big revolution is practically the sum of all small evolution that can be done in everyday life. And be sure that there will be always light at the end of the tunnel as long as you are digging. Thank you. Shukran.